Hello everyone, my name is Martin and I'm the Director of Marketing at Evolven and your host for this session. I'm happy to have on this session our guest expert from EMA, Dennis Drogseth, and Sasha Gillenson, Evolven's co-founder and CEO. Dennis Drogseth is a Vice President at Enterprise Management Associates, also known as EMA. He supports EMA through leadership in IT service management, CMDB systems, as well as megatrends like advanced operations analytics, cross-domain automation systems, IT to business alignment, and service-centric financial optimization. This past spring, Morgan Kaufman published a book co-authored by Dennis called CMDB Systems: Making Change Work in the Age of Cloud and Agile, and it's available on Amazon for purchase. Hi, Dennis. Glad to have you here today.
Hey, Martin. Glad to be here.
Sasha Gillenson is Evolven's founder and CEO. Sasha was a top guru in quality at Mercury and has advised numerous Fortune 500 companies on technology and process optimization. Hello, Sasha. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Martin.
Great. So before we begin, let's welcome all the attendees and thank you for joining us. This should be very exciting. So let's get started. Dennis, I'm going to hand this over to you.
All right. So hopefully everyone can see that. And the topic, as Sasha mentioned, is advanced IT analytics and the new war room. Who needs to be there and who doesn't? And so right away, you may notice that I'm talking about the new war room, and Sasha will be talking about saying goodbye to the war room. But I think the net will be a confluence of ideas, because my new war room is not the old war room. So we say goodbye to the old war room, and the new war room is maybe more like a proactive air traffic control center, which I hope will be clear as I go forward. So what I'm going to talk about today, problems with IT, a little bit of background. We've done a lot of unique research at EMA on what we call advanced IT analytics. We call it various other things as well. Explain why it's different from more traditional BI and some of the big data moves even for IT. We're going to talk a little about change performance management as an integral thought. And then finally look at what I really mean by the new IT organization, and then the, quote, new war room is really a more proactive coming together and dialogue. Problems with IT. So I'm sure that nothing here is going to be terribly shocking to you, but if it is, by all means ask me about it. One is, of course, the old challenge of reactive organization, sort of shrouded in acronyms, lost to the humanity it serves, versus a more proactive, consumer-oriented IT organization. Needless to say, that transition cannot be fixed purely by a technology. Even pharmacology can't fix that. But advanced analytics, as we'll see, can be a great foundation for bridging that divide. And that, of course, is both an internal and external one in terms of fragmentation, broken dialogue, lack of communication, traditional technical priorities that have been narrowly defined within silos, the classic mantra of mean time to innocence versus really solving the problem. The consumer population is also changing within IT in terms of IT services, much more hip, much more service aware, much more, in many cases, far more fluent than I am in using mobile devices. And my children can do more than I can, and they're provisioning little applets on the way to the movie theater. That wasn't something I did when I was their age. And so business requirements are more dynamic, and ironically, in some respects, IT services are actually more business critical than ever. You hear about digital transformation and the digital enterprise. That's because businesses are being reshaped through IT. But that also poses challenges, again, of communication and shared vision. And so how do we all, how do we bridge that divide? Well, one of the best investments to make is advanced IT analytics, and we're going to be looking at it in terms of traditionally what EMA is called tiered analytics. Really is the same idea behind blended analytics coming from Evolven. It's a lot different from just putting everything in one pot and hoping for the best and getting a lot of people in white coats to work on it. So for one, advanced IT analytics should be more optimized for real time, should be more focused on predictive than just trending, but combine both. Data assimilation is much faster, at least in traditional warehousing. I know that arena has improved dramatically, but still, it's a much more real-time story, discovery and data collection, and service modeling. One of the themes for this presentation is relevant in a way that has just not been relevant in classic BI. The notion of trusted sources, the notion of capitalizing on efficient analytics and then bringing them into, sort of in summary, into a common view. Therefore, it scales better, and the capabilities of taking advantage of it are much faster time to value as well. The other thing about advanced IT analytics, and notice I'm saying IT, and you'll see why, not just operations. It's a bridge across IT, the service desk and ITSM, executives, and even development. It's uniquely suited to combining change and performance, security, capacity. All this data is interdependent and relevant to each other, and by having a common set of insights across it can be hugely valuable. So one thing that EMA has looked at over the years, evolution of IT tools and monitoring. Traditional tools were all built to get data of some kind or get information, do something with it. Sometimes they built topologies, sometimes not. Sometimes they'd share data, sometimes not. There'd be some form of visualization, maybe even some attempt at the higher level, a dashboard to do a handshake with business alignment. And of course, in some cases, a little bit of automation built in to support automated actions. What we're seeing over the years, really, is an evolution of layers where there's a layer of analytics, a layer of automation, a layer of dashboarding, bringing things together across all these separate little investments. It's a tool that's optimized to collect niche data from a niche source. They certainly not be the one that you want to use to analyze your services. So, a little quick reprisal here. Why is advanced IT analytics different than classic big data? Speed in collection and speed in analysis, both. Context from modeling, context from dealing with trusted sources or sources that do their own analytics and can be optimized in a common view. Interdependencies, understanding where services reside and understanding, leveraging data to map to that. Flexibility, because you can pick and choose a little bit. Again, there's a little more wisdom about how you're bringing your data together than in traditional classic warehousing. And much faster turnaround and time to value. When we do evaluations, as we have of advanced analytics for IT, what do we look for? We want to make sure that you can do both bottoms up and tops down, but certainly we want to make sure that what you see can map to critical services and business values. We want to see strong assimilative powers to bring in data from different sources, including a lot of monitoring tools, for instance, or even asset or inventory tools in some cases. Service modeling is key, being able to work with service modeling, or in some cases actually provide interdependencies. Breadth of stakeholder support, and we'll see a little more about what that means in a moment. But advanced analytics should not be an investment for just one professional sitting in the corner of the data center. A lot of realization, realized potential, not just some mysterious cauldron, some Delphic oracle sitting in the corner somewhere. Strong support for virtualization and cloud. Quick time to value, which is something that you will not get if you just all try to do it yourself, I have to say. And we're seeing a laudable but nonetheless somewhat, I'll say, a little bit misguided. It's a lot of good investments, and Evolven is one of the best and offers unique values, as we'll see, to bring time to value. Minimal administrative overhead. And it transcends, it's that layer above all those little niche tools that are sort of doing their thing, but they're doing their thing more in isolation than in commonality. So we did some research in last Q4, and the data you're going to see in the next couple of slides comes from that. We looked at 150 respondents in the US and 100 in Europe. We were looking at cross-domain capabilities for analytics. Basically, we required that our respondents either had some advanced analytics deployed, and we went through what that meant in terms of big data, flexibility, assimilative capabilities. Most of our respondents were in the process of deployment. A number were proof of concept, but a few had it deployed as well. So what do we see when we look at those respondents? We saw that they were trying to do cross-domain. They didn't just want their analytics to look at just the network or just the systems or just even the apps. We saw a breadth of stakeholder roles, and these included typically 4 domain, for the average respondent, 4 domain-specific roles, 3 cross-domain roles, such as architect or manager or whatever, and 2 non-IT roles. Of the non-IT roles that were prevalent, number 1 was business development and planning, and 2 was the 3-way tie, line of business, online operations, and user experience management. Bringing those business-centric roles into the picture was also key. Automation priorities were superly important as well. I mean, if you're going to be smart and you see the world correctly, you need to be able to act, right? It's great to be wise. In fact, it's fundamental to be wise. But automation is a natural next step. And I think Evolven can talk to that pretty well as well. So some of the priorities were workflow integration, performance diagnostics, not surprisingly, audits for security, network and systems config, and application provisioning. And what benefits did we see here? Again, same research, faster time to resolve problems, better optimization of assets, getting better real-time insights and historical trends on IT services and the infrastructure supporting them. Here's a key one, better correlation between change and performance. And that relates to more efficient use of capacity. Security was a big factor, of course, as well. And 7 is, in a funny way, there's sort of a parallel between classic warehousing and traditional event correlation where you have to write your own rules. There's a lot of work that goes into both. And what people want in advanced analytics is something that allows them to move fast without having to do that extra work. By the way, the average number of benefits was 5 per respondent. We saw, though, use cases going up to 10 or 15 different use cases for the same investment. So they're very modular in value. So we looked at a lot of different roles, okay? So performance, change management, we looked at financial optimization, we even looked at development. So what were the priorities when it came to change in configuration? Needless to say, doing that job effectively, making that an efficient driver was key. And of course, in doing that, as I think Sasha will also point out, there's a strong impact on performance, especially when you can go down to depth and look at code, environment, and configuration, application data, capacity. Get the bottoms up as well as the top down and understand what can happen when you make a change. Our respondents were also looking for if-then change impact, capacity planning, and at least linkages to a CMS or app dependency mapping at some level to understand where things resided and how performance and change issues would coincide with that. We also look at other roles, as I mentioned. One other role I'll quickly mention, just kind of it's almost parallel here, is software development. What do they want? They wanted almost the same things. They wanted if-then change impact. They wanted to prioritize, understand how availability and performance was related to what they were doing. And they also wanted insights into interdependencies that might affect their applications over the infrastructure. So what kind of interdependencies, now that we're talking about it, what people care about? And by the way, this data, to be clear, this is number to 100%. It really should be, the actual totals are higher, almost a little more than double. So starting at the bottom, how many were not interested in understanding interdependencies? It should be about 13%, not 6%. That's still a very small percentage. Most IT respondents correctly realize that understanding interdependencies and analytics are a strong handshake. Number one, of course, not surprising, infrastructure application interdependencies, right? That's going to always be number one, I think. But number two, just edging out some of the others, is interdependencies over the virtualized environment. Not a surprise there. Cloud is something to optimize. It's not the end point of the journey. You can only optimize it if you can see it clearly. And then infrastructure to infrastructure, app to app, et cetera. So a pretty strong statement about interdependencies. By the way, if there were only 13% not interested in interdependencies, an incredibly only 6% were not interested in some linkage to service modeling. Again, I think correct. We're now moving on to a bit of research we did more recently, beginning of this year, or actually into the spring, about IT service management, and bringing that into the operations game with change and configuration release. Data on CMDB, very happy to see it as someone who just wrote a book about CMDB and CMS. A growing number from just 2 years ago are deploying CMS, CMDB. Cloud is actually an accelerator for us there, and that dependency mapping, but the technologies are changing to become more dynamic. And the 71%, as you'll see, purchased ADDM. Cloud, asset, and data center consolidation were the dominant drivers. And most want to link the ADDM to CMS. By the way, one of the interesting facts that we saw for the first time ever, the number one use case for the CMS was performance and service impact over change even and asset. So a far more dynamic kind of investment than in the past. When it came to automation, IT process automation, which is a way of bringing all various automated tools together, came in first. And then systems config, right on its heels, workflow and cooperating with ops and the desk, storage, network config, and lifecycle app asset management, which is also a configuration requirement. So to wrap up now, what do I mean with this sort of air traffic control center, the new war room? We talked about the problems of IT at the beginning. One of my friends who wrote a wonderful book called The Quantum Age of IT does a wonderful job presenting what a new IT organization might evolve to, should evolve to. I think some of these are pretty self-evident. Learning versus just stuck in its old ways. Disciplined, I guess anyone would understand that. Transparent, meaning that transparent both to different groups and constituencies within IT, but also between IT and its service consumers, internal and to some degree external, potentially if they're customers or partners or whatever. Dynamic, that also probably goes without saying, especially with cloud and agile pressures to move more quickly. But what about intimate? Intimate is about communication. And I would say if there is a new war room, without trying to raise any eyebrows here, it's an intimate place, a place where people actually communicate well, have shared values, have shared resources to understand what they're thinking, and also an intimacy with the consumer to understand what their priorities are. So it's a very challenging term, but I think a very good one. When you look at stress factors behind this, we talk about cloud. Cloud requires IT to be a broker of services. It's also an environment to be optimized. Configuration performance are so central there. Agile ups the speed, but also ups the requirement to see things more clearly. Otherwise, you become, you may be doing things faster, but maybe not with much relevance, or maybe you're automating train wrecks because you don't know what the road looks like. Consumerization, that more savvy consumer we talked about at the beginning, breaking down that sort of self-protective acronymic wall so that IT can evolve to have a real dialogue with all the full variety of its service consumers. And that's something we're just beginning to see happen effectively, a lot of tools to help enable that. One of the perspectives is to say, okay, IT is really a product organization. It's not just a broker, it's a product organization. It makes something that has consumers, that has behavior around those consumers. Who are those consumers? How do they use that product? Who are they? And how valuable and relevant is it? So who should be in the new war room, as I view the new war room, which is, again, a little more proactive, more like an air traffic control center than a beleaguered battle station with everybody trying to defend their own sector. Versatile dialogue between the ITSM team and operations, upward visibility to the executive suite, integrated operations workflows, analytics with insights into user experience, integrated DevOps, so development is part of it. And basically what we're looking at is a mosaic that brings together all of IT and its business constituency in a fluent dialogue that's a far more proactive fabric than a traditional war room. And you'll also see investments like service modeling, as well as the analytics and the automation. Who should not be in the new war room? The traditional mindset is a siloed professional fighting to justify their existence with their own siloed tools. And from the book, this is one of my favorite examples, the hamster. And I can relate to it myself, sad to say. What we're trying to do is strategic initiative. What's the hamster scenario? Hamster's like running in the wheel. If you're just running around in the wheel, it's very hard to just take the time to catch your breath, stand back and say, wait a minute, maybe the wheel is not the right place to be. So how do you get beyond being a hamster? That's a common challenge, not just in IT, but probably when you read the newspaper across the whole world, I guess. So something to work on. And analytics can help, because analytics can point out a different place to go than running in that wheel. So to wrap up, before we turn it over back to Martin and Sasha, advanced IT analytics, it profits from being tiered or blended. That huge efficiency gained from bringing in other analytic subordinate sources and bringing them together in an intelligent way. Should support multiple use cases rather than just being a niche investment. Change management, service modeling, and AI, advanced IT analytics really go hand in hand, and really often in our data show the winners from the losers in terms of understand that. They can bring those things together well. IT organizations need to transform to become more business-driven. I know that's a cliche, but it's true more than ever. And advanced IT analytics is really a fundamental enabler for that. And finally, the new war room should be empowered by the visibility of advanced analytics, the power of automation, service modeling, and a true cross-domain or service-aware view. Hamsters probably not welcome unless they're willing to change. All right, Martin, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dennis. We're going to be handing it over to Sasha, and he'll be presenting his insights on how blended analytics can help you take the guesswork out of decision-making process. Sasha, over to you.
Thank you, Martin. I would like to take a step back, and Dennis spoke a lot about the new war room, but I would like to explore how actually most of IT organizations are dealing with the challenges today before they started the transformation. And I would like to start with a small exercise. Let's take a look at this picture representing IT, 15 years ago and now. And can you see any difference? And to make it easier for everyone, I'll provide the answer. I mean, there is no difference in the sense that there is huge demand for IT services, as Dennis has mentioned. There are new technologies in place. There is a consumerization of IT and many other important trends. But in terms of IT operations, if you look today into the organization, most of the time IT operations are still dealing with stability, performance, and availability issues. So the question is, why does this happen? In spite of all the investments, in spite of all the tools and processes that were put in place over the past 15 years, why are we still looking into, most of the time, running as a hamsters in the wheel? And the answer for that is that, our approach today, whenever, a critical issue happens, is by bringing the people, the smartest people into the room. Being this a physical location, a virtual, conference bridge, but the idea is that, something unknown hit us, and now, we need to figure out what is it, what is the root cause. So we bring a bunch of people we trust, and they start to look into different symptoms. I look into the performance monitoring tools, you look into the logs, he's looking into network data, I'm looking into the database statistics, but there is no one who actually sees the whole picture. The focus of this investigation typically is on the symptoms, because this is available information. And very frequently it misses the information about the changes, and then it mentions the importance of the changes, because they are typically the true root cause you are looking for. All this information is processed manually, and in the end, these are smart, experienced people. They make an educated series of educated guesses, and they leap to the root cause. But it takes time, and the result of it is that there are still too many service incidents. Still sees that troubleshooting and mean time for resolution is too long, and this kind of response, bringing your best people to the room, is pretty wasteful. As a result, we see frequently organizations, trapped in this kind of reactive firefighting loop. Dennis called it a hamster's wheel, but this is an issue. When you have an alert coming, you have a critical issue, you resolve this issue, find the root cause, fix it, and then you have a new alert or a bunch of new alerts, and that's how that's your day. You actually go alert after alert, resolving the issues, rather than concentrating and focusing on new projects, adding value to business of your organization.
But this is a good point to introduce our version of advanced IT analytics that Dennis was discussing. We call Evolven blended analytics that help IT actually to break this vicious circle of dealing, reactively with the issues and moving to more proactive mode of work. So what is the blended analytics from Evolven? First of all, we look at all the relevant data sources. We take information about symptoms and the indicators, essentially, of the health, and indicators of the problems in your environment. And examples could be data from application performance management tools, log, network, and so on. What's important, we add this information on top of changes which are the true root cause of the issues, of the symptoms we are investigating. And then we put it into IT context of IT activities creating the changes, like, for example, deployment activities, service requests that are implementing, triggering changes. We focus the analysis on the change, on the true root cause of the problem, and we do this applying powerful analytics, a mix of machine learning techniques, heuristic algorithms, and out-of-the-box knowledge base. And I'll elaborate more on this mechanism later. The result of that is that we can have insights into, first of all, what actually changed, end to end. We know everything that happens in the system. We have full visibility and control, and we can take this information and zero on the root causes of the incidents we are investigating very rapidly. And even more, we can go and predict which changes will be causing the issues in my environment, estimating their risk before the incident actually happens. The result of that is that obviously you have less issues because you can preempt, many of those by focusing on high-risk changes. You have much faster resolution by immediately going to the root causes, avoiding the costly root cause analysis process. And you can do everything more efficiently because you have all this information at hand. So let's look at this first pillar of blended analytics, all relevant data sources. Here you see a screenshot of our product, and I will show you more in the demo. but it actually gives a good visualization of how all these different types of data are blended together on the same timeline. So at the top, we see the contextual activities, deployments and service requests that trigger the changes. These changes are captured by Evolven. These green, yellow, red bars are the changes that we see as collected directly by Evolven. They are the true root causes that we will be looking for investigating the incident. And then we have the information about the symptoms, information coming from application performance management tools like AppDynamics, New Relic, Dynatrace, machine event log analytics tools like Elasticsearch, Splunk, Sumo Logic, and so on, network management tools, and so on. All the different monitoring and analysis tools that provide you information about undesirable conditions in your system behavior. So just putting this information together on the same timeline creates huge value, as reported by our customers, being able to quickly understand what happens actually in their environment. But that's not all what we do. All these different data feeds coming from external tools, and we mentioned already a couple of those, but here you can see all the different examples, and collected by Evolven. That's a very important piece. The information about the changes is something that is rarely available fully in IT environment. That's why we need to collect this information for you. This information is a critical piece of the analysis because without knowing the true root cause, you're really guessing. You really don't have the last mile to go, and it's frequently overlooked because it's information that is very difficult to collect. Today, Evolven is the only vendor that collects, correlates, and analyzes all the changes end-to-end from application down to infrastructure at most granular level, from configuration to application code to data, capacity, and workload. And if you look into all the different types of changes, all the changes in the environment state, they explain 95% of all the issues. Everything that happens can be explained by the change, unless you have a hardware failure, which is like a certain percent of the issues. But all the rest, change is the true root cause of incidents you are actually facing. Now, if you have the information about the changes, analyzing this information before something happens can actually make it can allow you to predict the incident. And how this works? You have a change. We detect the change. We analyze risk associated with the change. So how probable is that this change will cause some kind of performance or availability issue? And so we report the information about high-risk changes back to you, and you can review it and fix the changes that can become later issues, and therefore prevent the incident. Now, typically there is a lag between the change and the incident, so you have time to fix the problem before it actually manifested to your users and your customers. But even for the changes that slip this process, and there still will be some outstanding issues that you will need to resolve, the whole resolution process becomes much, much faster. You once you have the incident and you have some symptoms, generating alerts from your monitoring systems, information about the change is already processed and collected by Evolven. So we'll point, as soon as you have alert, we'll point you to the most probable changes that could trigger this alert. Probably, some changes in your, some mistakes in your configuration, some problematic updates in your application, some changes, in types or size of your data, changes in capacity, and so on. And therefore, again, having this information at hand right as you have the alert, you can resolve the incident much faster, avoiding the costly root cause analysis process. There is a lot of information coming from external tools and collected by Evolven. It's impossible to crunch manually this information without automated analytics, and therefore the role of analytics is very essential in Evolven. There are two parts here to our analytics engine. One is actually cleansing and correlation of the data. We need to ensure that all the information coming from external and internal sources is normalized. All the irrelevant information is filtered out, and all the data is correlated. You have this triplet actually established: the context, the change, the symptom. Now, once this correlation is done, now we can assess the risk of the changes. We can calculate risk score for each change dimension, each change attribute, and also blend the data source. An example could be consistency of the changes. How consistent are the changes? Are actually the changes equally distributed to all your similar servers? Or, how frequent is your change? Is it a change that we see for the first time, or is something that we see repeatedly, the same change that was not causing any troubles, not causing any symptoms in the past? Now, with machine learning, you can actually identify various types of dangerous anomalies, like, for example, a change that in configuration that really pushes the values of the parameters outside of the boundaries typical for your environment, or some kind of time anomalies when you see the changes regularly done, for example, through your overnight maintenance window, done in the middle of the day, which definitely is risky. We also have the knowledge base coming out of the box, built with the help of the experts, industry experts, that also give the estimate of the impact of various changes as their criticality on your environment. And this knowledge base can be fine-tuned with the input from your subject matter experts to improve and fine-tune analysis results for your specific environment. So how this technology is actually used? The first and basic use case, is very obvious. Actually reduce mean time to resolution to accelerate your troubleshooting. Once you know what changed, and we can correlate automatically these changes to symptoms and their context, we can zoom in on true root causes, helping you to cut the time, of finding this information and figuring it out in the traditional war room scenario. But our customers realize that once they have, this information used for incident investigation, they actually knew about, Evolven knew about the changes and about their risk well before the incident has happened. So this information could be used to prevent incidents. So Evolven can actually report high-risk changes early on. We can alert you on the changes so you can take an action. We can report your irregularities, anomalies based on the patterns we recognize. We can also look not just over the timeline, but across environments and see not just the changes, but the differences between your environments in terms of their capacity, in terms of their configuration, versions, code, and so on. Is your DR aligned with your production? Are the new servers that you deploy matching your golden baseline? Are your servers similar across, sufficiently similar across the clusters? And the third one, the third scenario is the DevOps analytics. Essentially, you can validate, a readiness of your environment even before you make the deployment. And the last but not least is the automated audit. It's actually a very critical use case, as today most of the organizations are regulated by some kind of compliance requirements. And having all the change information available, essentially out of the box, we can make this audit very easy for you, demonstrating the change controls. We know which changes are unauthorized. We alert on high-risk changes, so auditors can have access to all the information instantly without you providing costly manually generated reports. So what is, to summarize, what is the difference in Evolven? We look into the data across different silos. Symptoms, change, context, we bring all this information together. And we do analysis focused on the change, because the change is the true root cause of the issue. It's an essential piece, a critical piece of the analysis. Now we apply analytics because there is so much data that you really need to have automated analytics to make sense, to provide the valuable, actionable insights. And what is very important, and Dennis was talking about this, that the results are quick. You can't spend now years in deployment of another enterprise tool. You really need to be able to get results pretty much instantly, as you have product in your environment. So at this point, I will switch to a quick demo to show you the capabilities of the live product. So what we see here is a visualization, things that I already showed in the presentation, visualization of the data over the timeline. We see here that we had a number of deployments executed by some deployment automation tools, in this case, CA Nolio. We see that a build was deployed on a particular set of hosts. Now we see also the changes that were deployed as a result of this build under the deployment lines. And we also see alerts that were created as the result of this deployment. So what the picture tells us here is that we have a bunch of the alerts. Here we can see that, for example, a Dynatrace a application performance monitoring alert telling that response time of particular transaction becomes slower than predefined threshold. We also see from Splunk analyzing logs here that the same transaction starts to throw errors. So clearly something is going on. So now, if we want to look into the incident investigation scenario, if we click on the alert, we can see actually which changes correlate with this alert. And we can see that there are some green, yellow, and red bars in this selected changes. This represents the risk of these changes, essentially their probability to be a root cause. So what we are interested now to do is to actually focus on high probability changes, the high probability root causes. And we can see that there is now, at the bottom part, what kind of changes, high-risk changes we have here. We can see that some changes are associated with Microsoft SQL, some changes are associated with Windows. There is one change is the IIS Microsoft Web Server, so this Microsoft environment. We can see how the changes are distributed over different hosts. We can also see what kind of changes we have here by automatically grouping these changes. So we can see that there are some changes in Windows services and Windows drivers and so on. So first of all, this information allows us to involve only those specialists that need to be participating in the investigation. The second, we can provide valuable details to this specialist, like for example, what actually happened in Windows. The system administrator can see that a particular services were started, which definitely can explain a performance problem. And this information is available instantly, meaning that again this whole investigation could be done in minutes. And that's the experience we have with the customers when the investigations that were going for hours previously or sometimes for days could be now accomplished and we can get to the root cause in minutes and sometimes seconds. So when we look into the proactive scenario, it's pretty much using the same kind of approach. We don't have alerts. Let's look at this a different subset of changes. We don't have alerts here, right? So we don't have any problem happening yet, but we do see that we have some changes that are actually red. And we can see why these changes are identified as such. They were not authorized and they were executed inconsistently. So as a result, we can actually drill down on the changes and see why they were done, by whom they were done, and you can act on the changes if you realize that they can create a problem, remediating them before the problem happens. Another way to look proactively into the environment is by looking, setting up a dashboard for your production support, application support organization. Now you can actually see, the high-risk changes, not authorized changes, not consistent changes that happen in your environment before, again, frequently before they cause the problem. You can react to broken policies. You can see, what kind of high-risk changes happen in your environment. As a result, again, you have a KPI and you have a trigger showing you if your environment is threatened by the changes that are potentially dangerous for your performance and your availability. Martin, with that, I would like to pass the control back to you, and I think it's time for questions.
What role, if any, does advanced IT analytics play in DevOps?
Well, it plays a huge role. So to try to be brief about it, there is a growing requirement, in spite of the containers and all the move to kind of have a prepackaged application, sort of perfect Disneyland moving forward. The real world is filled with a miscellany of interdependencies, and moving from a development environment to a real world environment requires a common set of views and insights, so the changes can be made and provisioned and then move fluidly between development and operations, and even involving, as our data shows, workflows and validation through some of the service desk professionals as well. Analytics can provide a common frame of reference throughout the entire life cycle. And another value, by the way, is in understanding the health and impact of the application once it's in production, which can be very valuable feedback to those in development willing to learn from the real world, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. Sasha, regarding Evolven, how are the changes detected? Is this through an agent, a third party? What are you doing there?
So today, the way we detect the changes is through agents, which are essentially running on the servers in the IT environment, scanning it and collecting information about the configuration, state of applications, data capacity, and so on. So the information is collected by our agents.
Okay, we have another question for you, Sasha. So with the alerts that you get, how can we pass on these alerts to the outer world? For example, as an omnibus event to our level 1 support.
Right. So our alerts could be delivered, through email, SNMP, or any other API. So whatever we generate actually could be integrated into any existing dashboard system or event management system as well. Just the capability of our enterprise alerting.
Okay. One last question. We're coming up on the end of the hour. Sasha, what's the difference between root cause identified by an APM solution and the root cause from changes?
So that's a very important question, and generally I would, compare this to a 911 call, right? When call is coming, the police can trace back, the location of the call, the city, the area, the house. You don't really know what caused the call until you really go and see what happened. Is it a health issue? Is it a crime or something? The same story with the Evolven versus the traditional, monitoring tools. Monitoring tools will tell you that there's a problem in a certain area. Your database is suffering, for certain reasons. Your application has a problem. But the reason of the true reason of this problem is something related to the change. It's a change in configuration, in data, in code, and so on. And only Evolven is actually collecting this information and tying this back to the systems. So the differences between finding the true root cause and identifying the, more narrow area where the problem happens.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us for today's session. I personally found this very interesting. And I always like to hear from you, from all the people who attended our session, so feel free to drop me a line. You have my contact details here on the screen, and let us know if you had any feedback, how things went, or if you'd like to sign up for a live demo. So on behalf of our team, I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. We'll be sending you a copy of this presentation. Want to learn more? Visit our website and check out the resource section, videos and presentations, or sign up for our blog feed. Once again, thanks, Dennis and Sasha.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.